So welcome back. We are at the sources of Muslim law. Still we are in the module first of family law first, that is introduction to Hindu law and Muslim law. So far as Hindu law, we completed the nature application of Hindu law, schools of Hindu law and sources of Hindu law. Now we are in the introduction of Muslim law, wherein we finished the nature and development of Muslim law all over the world and particularly into the India. In India, we seen the Shariat Application Act of 1937 codified the tradition customs of Muslim law, abrogated unreasonable customs and made applicable the custom which are inconsistent with the Hadith and Quran. Then we also seen the schools among Muslim law. They are of three kinds: Sunni school, Shia school, and other school. Again, they were divided into different kind. That also we had seen that Sunni school divided into four sub school, that is Hanafi school, Maliki school, Shafi school, and Hanbali school. Even Shia school is also divided into three, and the other schools were considered as modern. They were also divided into two sub kind that we had seen hitherto. Today we will start with the sources of Muslim law. So sources of Muslim law are of seven kind here also, ancient and modern. So among ancient, there were primary and secondary. The Quran is primary and interpretations made of Quran were of course secondary sources. So there were seven sources, that is Quran, one is Quran, second one is Sunnah. Sunnah, that is the way shown by the God, means traditions observed by the Prophet Muhammad. They were collected and called as Sunnah. Third is Ijma. Fourth one is Qiyas. And the modern sources are judicial decisions, legislations, and justice, equity, good conscience. Of course, modern sources were observed by the court. Even the ancient were also taken into account by the court. So these are the seven sources. First four are ancient and rest three are modern. So ancient sources are Quran, Sunnah, Ijma, and Qiyas. And modern sources are judicial decisions, legislations, and justice, equity, good conscience. Now we will go in detail. Let's take the first source, that is Quran. Now Quran, you know, is a holy text among Muslim law. So according to the Muslim belief, the Quran is the sacred book which was revealed from Allah to the Prophet Muhammad from 610 to 632 AD. AD is Anno Domini. It equivalent into year is 23 years. So during the period of 23 years, the God Himself revealed the Quran to the Muhammad Paigambar. This is the Muslim belief, and later this was written down, etc. So, in terms of content and structure, the Quran contains 114 chapters, which are called as surahs in Arabic language. And again, these surahs contain 6,236 verses, which are called as ahayas in Arabic. So we may take the verses as sections, equivalent to sections, and surahs are equivalent to chapter if we look into the Constitution Act. Likewise, the surahs are equivalent to the chapter in the Quran, and the verses were equivalent to sections. So we may say, in other words, that there were 6,236 sections in the Quran, giving the elaborate rules, regulations relating to conduct of a Muslim. So the Quran was revealed over two periods which are known as Makkan and Madian. Makkan, while proceed towards Makkah and Madian upwards during the period when Muhammad spent his life in Medina. So during that period, whatever revealed was classified as per the place where Muhammad is when the Quran is revealed by Allah to Muhammad Paigambar. So the majority of surahs with a theological character were revealed during the Meccan period. So far as theological part is concerned, that part was revealed when the Muhammad was in Mecca. By way of contrast, those revealed during Median period means when the Muhammad was in Medina, this period is relating to legal provisions. So there are total of 200 verses, what we call as sections, related to legal rulings in the Quran, and these may be called as or classified as follows. So among those 6,236, the 200 verses are exclusively dealing with the legal aspects. Other deals with the theology, religion, culture, traditions, etc. But 200 verses exclusively dealt with the legal aspect. Now we see how these 200 verses classified. So first 70 verses deals with the law relating to family and inheritance. So we are observing the classification of 200 verses dealing with the legal aspect in Quran. So 70 verses, VERSES, 70 verses are related to family and inheritance law. So the subject which we are dealing with. The another 70 verses are relating to obligations and contract. So law relating to contract, but we have secular law, that is Indian Contract Act. But even Quran is also having the rules regulating the obligations among Muslims or contractual relations among Muslims, be it related to trade, services or other aspect. The next 30 verses are exclusively on criminal law. So law relating to punishments, evidence, the crimes, etc. And the last 30 verses are dealing with the procedure. So presentation मध्ये 20 झाला असेल पहा नंतर. These are 30 verses are related to procedure. So how these 200 verses can be classified as such. So Quran we can say elaborately deals with the legal as well as other religious aspects among Muslim, and the Quran being revealed by the Allah to Muhammad Paigambar is considered as a primary source among Muslim law. Now we will move towards the second source, that is Sunnah. Sunnah is the way shown by Prophet to the Muslim that to behave in this particular way, because that behavior is the behavior of the Muhammad itself. So that was consolidated and it was called as Sunnah. So in other words, we may call it as a traditions of the Prophet. So the word Sunnah means the path, way, and it is the practice and precedents of the prophet. How prophet behaved, his behavior is or conduct in society is nothing but the sunnah. So it is the proper practical application of the basic principles of Islam embodied in Holy Quran. So Quran and Sunnah together consist the basic source of Muslim law. Even there is debate whether Sunnah is a primary source or not, because Sunnah was later after Muhammad were collected by his followers or disciples. So Sunnahs are traditional stories transmitted from the Prophet Muhammad called as hadith, and the memorization and transmission of the Sunnah in literary form is characterized as hadith. So like we have or Hindu have commentaries, digest, etc. in Hindu law, which was later said by one person and recorded by another. Similarly, these are the traditions said by Muhammad, recorded by others, and they were literally called as hadith. So the term hadith, which we seen already in the development of Muslim law itself. So the term hadith, it means occurring or taking place. जे काय घडतंय ते. So it represents the report of the Prophet Muhammad. So this source of law handed over to the Muslim community through rightful disciples of the Prophet. So these sunnahs were handed over from generation to generations by the rightful disciples of the Prophet. Rightful, those who are virtuous, those who are moral. They handed over these traditions from generation to generation to their descendants. And the first collection of the Hadith and Sunnah was made by the Imam Malik, and this book is considered as most authentic book of Hadiths. So he collected about 10,000 traditions of the Prophet. He omitted 8,000 of these 10,000, and the Muwatta in its final form contains only about 2,000 traditions. So initially collected 10,000 traditions, later removed 8,000, and finally authoritatively he kept 2,000 traditions of the Prophet, which were considered as hadith, that is sunnah, and followed by the Muslim community. Now we will go towards the third source, that is ijmas. So the ijma, it means consensus. Consensus means to take the opinion of several persons and arrived at a conclusion. So what majority says, that is to be followed. मराठीत त्याला मतैक्य म्हणायचे. एखाद्या प्रश्नावर जर वाद असतील तर जे कोण स्कॉलर असतील 10 किंवा काय असतील ते त्यांचं मत घेणं, 7 लोक किंवा मेजॉरिटी लोक जे सांगतील ते ऍक्सेप्ट करणं, या सिस्टीमला कन्सेन्सस असं म्हणतात आणि मुस्लिम लॉ मध्ये इट इज कॉल्ड एज इजमास. So that's what it is, a secondary source among ancient sources. So the word ijma means consensus. So it is the unchallenged agreement of all jurists of Islam of particular period on a question of law. What is to be done in particular situations? Opinion is gathered and decision is taken. So its authority is based on a well-known hadith, that is, my people will never agree on what is wrong. So the majority jurist will never decide the wrong things. On this presumption, the ijmas were allowed as a source among Muslim law. So according to the Imam Shafi, the legal knowledge of the jurist is to be taken into account. The jurist therefore took recourse to the principles of ijma or consensus of opinion. So ijma is a source of law because of this saying of Quran, that to be followed is the path of the men of faith, and the Prophet saying that my people will never agree on what is wrong. तर चुकीच्या गोष्टीवर कधीच हे ज्युरिस्ट एकमत होणार नाही, हा विचार लक्षात घेऊन इजमा हा मुस्लिम लॉचा सोर्स करण्यात आला आहे, की जे मेजॉरिटी सांगतील ते योग्य असेल एखाद्या लीगल क्वेश्चन्सवर. So the election of first Khalifa Abu Bakr was the first instance of ijma. So the appointment of Abu Bakr as a first Khalifa was made through the ijmas, means by taking consensus of the majority jurist. So ijma, once established, cannot be repealed, and no question of overruling of ijma. एकदा का ते तत्व प्रस्थापित झालं तर ते नष्ट करता येणार नाही आणि ते ओव्हररूल्ड करता येणार नाही. Therefore, ijmas already established through the schools of law is the unchallenged source of law. Now third is qiyas. आता पहिलं कुराण, त्याच्यात काय प्रॉब्लेम नाही. दुसरं इजमास. इजमा मध्ये एवढं लक्षात ठेवायचं की कन्सेन्सस ऑफ मुस्लिम ज्युरिस्ट वेअर टेकन इन टू अकाउंट. आणि तिसरं आहे क्वियाज. दुसरं सुना, सुना म्हणजे ट्रॅडिशन्स किंवा कस्टम्स धरून चाला त्याला. तर कुराण, सुना, इजमा, and last one is qiyas. So the Arabic word qiyas means analogy. So logical deduction, to apply logical deductions and decide particular question. So it is analogical deductions or the argument from the known to the unknown. So taking into account the known facts and revealed the what is unknown. So it does not purport to create a new law, but merely to apply old established principles to new circumstances. You can compare QS with the doctrine of precedent. So the already decided cases has to be taken into account to decide a new case. So principle is taken out from the already existing law and it has to be made applicable to new case and then take a decision. This is nothing but the QS. So this is reasoning by analogy. So QAS is more a principle of interpretation than a source of law. That's what it is, secondary source. So it will consist of ijtihad, that is personal reasoning, self-conscious of the Muslim jurist, or istihasan, that is called a juristic preference, means whatever already said by the jurist is to be taken into account, or disagreement, that is ikhtilaf, what we call as the dissenting judgment in today's context. Virodhi nikal dena, that is ikhtilaf, that is called as disagreement. So personal reasoning, juristic preference and disagreement, these three together consist of the principle for interpretation of Muslim law. And what arises out of this interpretation is called as qiyas. So ijtihad, istihasan and ikhtilaf are the three principles for interpreting Muslim law. And the product of interpretation is, or the process of interpreting by applying analogy is nothing but the qiyas among Muslim law, and whatever is the output of qiyas is to be followed as a rule of law. So thereby qiyas can be considered as a source of law. So these are the four ancient sources among Muslim law, that is Quran, Sunnah, Ijma and Qiyas. Now we will move towards the modern source, that is judicial decisions. So judicial decisions, though not established by the state court, but even prior to that, the other Muslim juries, they are also qazis, they are also deciding the cases, or they may issue certain decisions, be it a law. So it is called as fatwas among Muslim, and it has to be observed, followed by the Muslim community. Whether it is binding or not, that we will see. So judicial decisions. Here, the decisions of the Indian court and the Privy Council have considerably influenced the tenets of Muslim law. Because we seen in the introduction itself, the Britishers taken the assistance of Muftis Maulavis while interpreting Muslim law. Even though they decided the court cases of Muslim law through Privy Council or through Indian courts of British origin. So their decisions were also influenced the customs of Muslims law. So fatwas or opinion of judges and muftis in the light of facts of the case are important as they have been instrumental in the development and enrichment of the principle of the Muslim law. So the most famous collection of fatwas in India is called as Fatwa-e-Alamgiri, which compiled in Aurangzeb's time. So fatwas were collected, consolidated, and together they were called as Fatwa-e-Alamgiri because it was done during the era of Aurangzeb. and those fatwas were considered as a source of law as a judicial decisions given by Muslim jurists. And of course, the judgment given by the Privy Council and the court during British era, they together consist of judicial decisions. Now, in the recent time, the question was arose whether the fatwas today, in the modern context, whether the fatwas issued by the muftis are considered as binding, because in the last 10 years there were several controversial fatwas were issued by the Muslim muftis, Maulavis. Then the question arose in the era of constitution whether the fatwas issued by the Muslim jurists were considered as binding, and the issue was raised through public interest litigation before the Supreme Court. In the case of Vishwalochan Madan versus Union of India, this case was decided by Supreme Court on 7th July 2014, wherein court come to the conclusion that in the today's era, only the judgment delivered by the court established as per constitution, as per statute, are considered as a binding, and fatwas issued by the Maulavis of particular masjid or particular Muslim religious institutions were not having a binding force. So with this, we can say that the Supreme Court had given setback to the fatwas issued by the Muftis Maulavis and said that these fatwas are optional and not binding. They cannot be enforced by way of social disapproval or by way of other means. Otherwise, it will be illegal. Then we will move towards the next source, that is legislation. So it is similar what we see in Hindu law, that codification was started, parliament sit, make law. Same thing is happen here also in case of Muslim, but very much earlier, even prior to the codification of Hindu law, codification of Muslim law was started by the Britishers. So the following are some legislative enactments which have considerably altered or modified the Islamic law. And the first legislation is the Qazis Act 1880, wherein the regulation of Qazis among Muslims is made by this act. Then the Guardian and Wards Act 1890, we seen in guardianship, being a secular law, it is applicable to both or all Hindu, Muslim, Christian. Third one is the Musalman Waqf Validating Act of 1923 and later 1930. The law relating to Waqf. Then the Muslim Personal Law, that is Shariat Application Act, which we seen in the year 1937, wherein Muslim custom and traditions were made applicable to Muslim community in India. And those practices which are derogatory were abrogated by this law. The next legislation is the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939. We seen during the Maliki school that some of the provision of this act have a reference in the Maliki school. This legislation confers right to divorce on Muslim women on certain ground. The next is Waqf Act again. The older one is repealed, new one is enacted. This is the recent one, that is Waqf Act of 1954. The Waqf as a subject you have to study in family second. Then the Public Waqf Extension of Limitation Act, the Waqf Amendment Act, the Muslim Women Protection of Right on Divorce Act 1986, the most controversial legislations, because this legislation was enacted to undo the judgment of Supreme Court conferring maintenance as per section 125 on Muslim wife, so that we will see this law in detail in the topic of maintenance under Muslim law. So the Muslim Women Protection of Right on Divorce Act 1986, The famous case of Shah Banu Begum was repealed by this legislation. Then the recent one, that is the Muslim Women Protection of Right on Marriage Act of 2018-19 something. See whether 2018 or 19, 2018 I think. Earlier ordinance was passed. Later it was put into the parliament. Again amendment was made. This law is related to, comment in chat box, the Muslim Women Protection of Right on Divorce Act 2019. This law is related to, again this is also more controversial legislation. Comment in chat box. The Muslim Women Protection of Right on Marriage Act is related to, nobody knows. Is it so? Chat box is working. The question is the Muslim Women's Protection of Right on Marriage Act. See the difference between two legislations. In the year 1986, it was Protection of Right on Divorce Act. Now it is Protection of Right on Marriage Act. This law confers certain right on marriage. Once marriage is there of Muslim wife, she is entitled to a right not to be divorced from her husband. Yes, comment in chat box. These legislations abolished the concept of, chat box काम करत नाहीये का? Yes, triple talaq. The earlier judgment of Supreme Court was there, Saira Banu versus Union of India. Prior to that, one reference petition was there, wherein question was discussed that there should be a law prohibiting certain practices among Muslim community. Thereafter, Saira Banu and other persons approached to the court challenging the custom of triple talaq, and they stated that this custom was not accepted by Shariat Application Act. Still, it is continued, and court decided in favor of petitioner and stated that this practice is derogatory to the Muslim personal law, that is Shariat Application Act, and ultimately to the fundamental rights of Muslim women, and directed to the parliament to enact a suitable legislations prohibiting the practice of talaq among Muslims. What parliament did? Parliament immediately issued an ordinance and enacted this legislation. That is the Muslim Women Protection of Right on Marriage Act. Year दिसतंय का तिथं 2019 वगैरे असेल. पहा नंतर तो ऑर्डिनन्स परत पार्लमेंटमध्ये ठेवल्यानंतर आणि आणखी एक गोष्ट पार्लमेंटनं त्यात ऍड केली ती म्हणजे the triple talaq was made an offense. So on this section was challenged again, that we will see in the law relating to talaq. But the challenge was set aside by the court, that how there can be involvement of criminal law into personal law, into family law. No other, really, no other personal law, no other family law provides for the punishment for giving talaq, and the judgment is dealing with the abolition of talaq. Why you are making it as a punishment? So under this act, giving triple talaq is an offense. So the last source, that is justice, equity, good conscience, we see it in Hindu law, same. self-conscious of the judge is to be considered while interpreting deciding case. The principles of fairness has to be applied. So where there is a conflict of opinion and there is no specific rule to guide court, the court follows that opinion which is more in accordance with justice, equity, and good conscience. This was held by Allahabad High Court in Aziz Bano versus Muhammad 1925, that even while deciding the cases under Muslim personal law, the judges can apply the principles of justice, equity, and good conscience. So this was also accepted as a source of Muslim law. So further, where the law analogically detected is inadaptable to the present needs of the society or inadequate in simple words, where its rigid application would result in hardship to the public, then the rules of equity is to be applied to relax the or to harmonize the rule among Muslims. So the Abu Hanifa, the great jurist, called this aspect as istihsan, that is giving juristic preference over textual law by applying principles of justice, equity, and good conscience. So with this year, we had finished the sources of Muslim law and the module first, that is nature application of Hindu law and Muslim law.